Fundamentals Test 7, Chapter 16 and 17. You got, whose test have you got? You got his. Whose test have you got? You got his, and y'all swap test too. You got everybody over there. All right. Normal oil pump pressure on an engine is what?
10 to 60.
10 to 60. What is the minimum oil pressure required?
10 psi for every 1,000 RPM.
That's a good answer. 10 psi for every 1,000 RPM. Can you remember that? All right then. In a typical engine lubrication system, what components are the last to receive oil? Yeah, that's going to be the valve train components, which would be what? Define the valve train components. What's the valve train component?
Your valve, your push rods.
Are the valves, do they got to be oiled?
You don't have to.
Lifters, push rods, rocker arms, if it's got the camshaft and the block. Listen to this though, this is important. I don't want you to forget it. The ones that have overhead cam have got a pressurized oil feed through the cylinder head gasket to the camshaft saddles. You got me? So you can have an oil leak, a pressure, like there's two different kinds of oil leaks. There's a splash leak, which is coming from the pan or the valve cover. There's a pressure leak, which is coming from the oil gallery, which would be the oil pressure switch can leak, or you can have it coming out from around the head gasket if that seal where that high pressure oil, where that lube oil pressure gallery goes up to the overhead cam. So every overhead cam engine has got the potential for a pretty bad oil leak from between the head and the block. You got me? You got to think about that. We worked on one time where this car had gone to another city down in Florida. This guy's daughter lived down there, and it was a Chrysler of some kind, but it had a little 4-cylinder engine in it. And they said it needed a rear main engine oil seal, and it was going to be $1,000. And so he says, "Ooh, goodness gracious! If it's going to cost that much, we'll let him do it up here at the school, because her dad worked here." And so they brought it up here, and I says, rather than just looking at the oil dripping off the bell housing and saying we've got an oil leak like that, why don't we clean everything up and put some dye in it and drive it and let it leak, and then come back and look at the dye with our black light? That works really well, because something else you can do is get Dr. Scholl's foot powder and spray everything white, and then where the oil's coming out, you see the oil, right? Okay, so we drove it, and it was coming from under the corner of the cylinder head. It wasn't coming from the rear main seal. And we also found a whole bunch of oil in that car that wasn't supposed to be in there. In other words, it has like 8 quarts of oil in a 5-quart crankcase. I don't know how that happened, but one way or another, there it is. Yeah, but anyway, we put a head gasket on that one, and took care of that oil leak. Oil passages in an engine block are usually called what? What do you call the oil passages in an engine block?
Galleries.
Galleries. And what they'll do is they'll basically have them things set up so that they drill those galleries out, and then they'll put pipe plugs in there where they ran their drill in there. You can see that. And sometimes if you're rebuilding one, a lot of really comprehensive rebuilders will take all of the pipe plugs out of the oil galleries, and they will go ahead and fix that by running, cleaning all that crud out of there that may be in there. Because that, what they call it whenever oil turns into carbon? What do they call it? Well, they call it when oil turns into carbon. They call it coking. Coking. You got that? All right. What is coolant? Antifreeze plus what?
Water.
Okay, what is antifreeze?
Isn't it like ethanol, alcohol? Ethanol.
Ethylene glycol, or it can be, propylene glycol. And this is what's really something. I went one time to, I had hiccups one time, and they just stayed with me, and my wife says, why don't you go to Walgreens and get some of that gripe water for little kids, little babies, those little stuff, and see if you can take some of that, see if it'll make those hiccups go away, because I had them for like 4 days. And so I says, okay, so I went up there and I got that, and when I spooned that stuff into my mouth, it was sort of syrupy, and it tasted like something really familiar. which was antifreeze. So I turned it around and looked at the back of it, and it said it was polyethylene glycol. Wait a minute, I just take a spoonful of antifreeze for hiccups? Come on, man. Well, another thing, have you ever used this Mio stuff you squirt in the water to make it taste better? You know what's in that?
Probably something to do with antifreeze.
Yeah, propylene glycol. Okay, now you can do a internet search for propylene glycol, and they use it for a sweetener. And I said, gosh, am I drinking something that's going to kill me or what? But they basically said propylene glycol is not poison, doesn't have any side effects or anything. So why in the world would they use propylene glycol to make antifreeze instead of ethylene glycol? I
Yeah,
don't
some people
know.
don't
Maybe it's
drink it.
because sometimes, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe it's because sometimes dogs drink antifreeze. And they felt like if your dog drank your propylene glycol antifreeze, then maybe it wouldn't kill him. I would not turn up a bottle of propylene glycol antifreeze though and drink it if I were you. That'd probably be a bad idea. Because typically ethylene glycol crystallizes in your kidneys and destroys them and all that kind of thing. All right, so anyway, just keep that in mind. Dexcool is what type of coolant? That's actually D, it's B and C. It's ethylene glycol and organic acid technology, OAT. Yep. I will tell you the problem with Dexcool though, if you don't service that cooling system the way you ought to, and if you just keep driving it, Dexcool will turn into red mud. It's
Oh
awful.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it gives you that little tape thingy, and then you gotta, it's kind of a flash.
Yep, this is nasty
I think
business.
that's what my
Yep.
dad's Jeep
Yeah.
kept wrong with it.
If coolant is mixed 50-50 with water, what's the freezing
Never
point?
did good.
D.
What's the freezing point if you mix coolant with water?
Negative 34 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Did you notice something peculiar about that if you took Fahrenheit and Celsius? What do you see about those? What do you see that's interesting about Fahrenheit and Celsius?
They're fairly close.
They're exactly the same. That's where those two scales cross, is 40 degrees below zero. You know that? When you go above or below that, you know, they start converging. But basically what they do is at minus 40, they do that. So minus 40 degrees Celsius is the same thing as mine. And it's really funny if you ask somebody that hasn't figured that up. He was, you know, somebody else says, I asked this friend of mine over in Dothan, I says, what is the Celsius equivalent of 40 degrees below zero Fahrenheit? And he did all the math and came up with 40 below Celsius, and he realized it was an easier answer than he thought. If the thermostat's not working, what diagnostic trouble code could be set?
P-O-128.
P0128, P0125, just words for the wise. If your Toyota Camry has a P0125, it doesn't necessarily mean the thermostat. It may mean the oxygen sensor is no good. Because what it's worried about is, can it go into closed loop fuel control? And you remember what closed loop fuel control is, right? That's when it's paying attention to the oxygen sensor. When you first start it, it's ignoring the oxygen sensor. It has to wait till the oxygen sensor warms up and starts putting out before it does that. In other words, before it starts paying attention to the oxygen sensor. So if it's in open loop, then it means it's using everything but the oxygen sensor to determine fuel pulse. You get that? That's really important. You're going to get, if you stay in here and go into engine performance, you'll appreciate that. So the code could be a 128. What does that mean? It means the thermostat's opening too soon. It means the water is going into being pumped to the radiator too quick, and it's not getting warm enough, because a healthy engine needs to run a little over 200 degrees. If it doesn't, it's not going to run as clean on the inside, which I think he said his is running just bone cold, and there will be a price to pay for that. The additives used in coolant, such as the dye and anti-corrosion additives, are about what percentage of the coolant?
3%.
What was that?
3%.
Yeah, that's just very little, isn't it? Why do we make antifreeze a different color? I mean, what? Some of them are green, some of them are orange, some of them are purple.
To help make it easier to identify the difference.
If you got a leak, you can also get the idea, hey, that's antifreeze. Or if you got a leak that's red, it's usually what? Red oil would be what? If you got a leak on the ground that's red oil, what's typically going to be?
Transmission fluid.
Transmission fluid. And what color is power steering fluid?
You don't have transmission.
New power steering fluid is what color?
Have no clue.
It's clear. New brake fluid is clear. Used brake fluid and used power steering fluid is usually a darker color. but brake fluid is largely clear. And brake fluid is hygroscopic. You know what hygroscopic means? What's hygroscopic mean? That means it absorbs water. Hygroscopic. You'd think that would be hydroscopic, wouldn't you? But hygroscopic means that. What happens if you spill brake fluid on your paint, on your fender?
It will strip.
If you leave it there, it eats the paint. Have you eat your paint with brake fluid before? You ever do that? You speaking from experience or what?
Yeah, you look under the hood line.
Oh, yeah,
It's
okay.
like my whole fender's rusted.
What'd you have to give you had a lot of brake fluid and spilled it everywhere or what?
When we were putting the new clutch master cylinder in,
Mm-hmm.
brake fluid got everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it
My
does that.
granddad was the one up there keeping an eye on the brake fluid level, and
But what do you do if you spill brake fluid on the fender and you don't realize it? Do you wipe it off with a rag?
I just left it there.
If you do that, it wipes the paint off. So what you do is you hit it with a water hose, and that's less likely to damage the paint. Yeah. What do you see? Did pretty good there? Burn lasted longer and higher. Now, whatever goes this way won't go that way. You know that, don't you? You understand that? Make sure you understand that pattern, because this is not the last time you'll see that. Did you use a test light at the wall wire to find?
No, that's what I was gonna ask you about, where's the,
Yeah, get your, go get your, pull it up. The one that goes from the module to the coil is the one you need to be checking. And it's gonna be pulsing. And while you got it in there pulsing, I want you to pull that plug wire again and see what that pulsing does. That's really important. You know. All right, when using 100% coolant, does it improve the cooling capacity of the system to use 100% coolant?
False.
False. What does it do? Ford made a mistake one time somehow and managed to put 100% coolant in a bunch of their pickup trucks, and he cracked a bunch of heads and stuff. It's just really not a good plan.
Did we go over number 9?
Huh?
Did we go over number 9?
No, we skipped over that one. That's on, you're on that one there. What type of water is used in premixed coolant?
I put the steel.
Always distilled water. If you're, incidentally, and I don't think I've ever used distilled water, but it's the right way to do it. So if you're wanting to mix up antifreeze water and do a really good job of it, there was an old man that came one time up there and was talking to me when I was at Ford Place. And he says, several years ago, I got some antifreeze and I wanted to mix up some 50-50 mix and keep it on the shelf in my garage so I'd have it. And it stayed on the shelf for several, for a year or 2, 3 years. He says, when I opened it up, it had turned to some kind of mush that looked like an algae in it or something. What was going on with that? And I said, well, you probably should have used distilled water instead of that. I mean, if you use distilled water, you don't typically have that problem. Now, how do you distill water? That's it? You just boil the water? That's all you do? Anybody know? You guys never been around a moonshine still or anything like that? I'm just kidding on that. Watch this. This is how you distill water. Like this. You're going to take this right here. You're going to have a container over here. And you're going to have one right here that's got a lid on it that's sealed, except it's got a copper tube.
condenser.
And that copper tube is fixed where it can drip in here. That is the sorriest mark in the world. But anyway, this copper tube right here, when you're boiling this water in here, eventually what happens to all the water? It goes away. But it follows this tube and drips over here. But what's left behind? All the minerals and all the heavy junk that was in the water is left behind, and you've got water that has absolutely nothing in it as far as minerals. However, there's alcohol and chemicals that will distill along with the water.
Wouldn't you want the condenser in a bucket of water?
No, all you do is you let the steam come through here, and as the steam's traveling through here, it condenses into water, and it drips in here. And there are some people that can buy that. I mean, you could make a little miniature science project like that.
Oh, I know, we had like this, we had kind of a little still in the backyard one time, we made some watermelon shine.
Yeah, so you knew how to do the distilling, right? Yeah. But anyway, like I say, this right here is, so watch out with those moonshine stories. Okay, when inspecting engine oil, what should be checked?
All of the above.
All of the above. That's not complicated. Most vehicle manufacturers specify brake fluid that meets what specification?
DOT3, is that right?
DOT 3, but what is DOT 5 brake fluid?
I don't know what goes in my wife. I've only ever seen it used in a motorcycle.
It's, what's the difference in it and regular .3?
I don't know.
It has silicone in it. That brake fluid got silicone in it, it's better for the rubber and parts, but you don't ever use .5 in any vehicle with anti-lock brakes, because anti-lock brakes, when those little valves are bouncing around in there, you know,
Silicone.
it will, well, it's not that, it'll actually whip it into a foam and suddenly you got a bunch of air in your system. You got that?
Where's my brakes?
What'd you do? What happened? What happened when you were looking at the pulse when you pulled the plug wire?
To graph, like, instead of it just being one giant streak and then be after the burning went higher voltage, and the actual initial spark was a higher voltage.
Now, did you able to get a test light nugget between ground and the negative side of the coil? Okay, so you actually were seeing your test light do what? Okay, now when you pull the plug wire, what did the test light do?
Burning pretty much.
I might need to go over that with you because you didn't get the right answer on that one.
Okay.
Now you'd know right away. Go to YouTube and pull up a video of mine on my channel called Poor Man's Scope, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's real short, doesn't take very long to watch it. Okay, so anyway, .5 is something you should never use in a regular car because it's going to have, it's going to whip that, it can whip it up into a foam. Cabin filter, which be cabin air filter, can be accessed from where?
Either A or B.
Either A or B, either under the dash or outside. And what does the cabin air filter do?
Filters the air in the cab. And the air conditioner.
Well, whenever you, let me ask you this, when you turn, what's the difference and when you turn your air conditioner on norm or max?
It's slow or it's like,
It recirculates or it sucks air from the outside.
Max is pulling air from, now let me ask you this, I'm driving to Atlanta on my car, whatever vehicle I've got, I don't care what kind of car it is. And I've decided that I'm driving up to Atlanta, I'm gonna put it on recirc. All right, but it got a little chilly in the car, and so I decided on the way back, I'm gonna turn off recirc and just have norm. Now, did I get better gas mileage on recirc / max? Huh?
You probably did because you weren't trying to cool the outside air.
Just think about it, you're not cooling the outside air, so your compressor is off, turns off more when you're on that. Here's another thing, here's another thing, whenever I let off the gas and I'm going down a hill and I put my transmission in neutral, right? I put my transmission in neutral to coast down the hill. Well, my RPM gauge is gonna drop, right? Am I saving gas? What do you think?
I would say really and truly not.
How come?
Because when you're idling, well, it doesn't really work the way I want it to. Never mind.
What? I mean, I need a reason engineering type answer. I mean, if this guy that I eat lunch with asked me, he says, if I'm driving my Camry and or whatever it is he was driving, he says, and I kick it up in neutral and coast down the hills, I'm not gonna save gas. What you gonna tell him? Now, she's got the right answer, but you gotta know why.
isn't it just the same amount of gas going down the hill and it just comes up with?
Well, it depends. If you've got more of a load on it, technically you'd burn more gas. But remember, when you let off the gas, it shuts off the injectors. If you're above, if the RPM's up and you let off the gas, the injectors go dark. Now, think about it. Why in a Sam Hill do you need to squirt gas in there if you're coasting anyway? Because the engine's being driven.
Everything's still moving.
Yeah, everything's still moving, but you're actually using momentum. So let's just shut our injectors down. There's no point in having the injector squirting gas when you're coasting. Another thing you can do, and you gotta be really careful with this, what if I take, and this is not true on every single vehicle, but it's true on most of them that I've been around here lately, or I've been around for years and years and years. But you have to be careful, don't do this and get in trouble. You hold the gas pedal all the way to the floor before you ever spin it over. Just hold it all the way to the floor. Be ready to let off the gas if something happens, and try to start it. That's clear flood mode. On most cars, that shuts off the injectors. And when you hold the gas pedal all the way to the floor, it'll just go. And when you let off the gas, you go. Now what you do is you confuse your girlfriend like that, see? or your boyfriend. So you got them in the car, and you're getting ready, you're done at the burger barn over here, and you say, okay, it's time to go home. Without them knowing what you're doing, you hold your foot to the floor, and you, oh, what? That's all right. I got this. I know what it is. You just stay here. You get out and act like you're fixing something. I think that got it.
I just rebuilt our flip. You're next week when they're not expecting it.
Would that impress you? Would do this?
Yeah.
It would, wouldn't it? You know. But no, what you do, the thing about it is it's something you can do with your foot. But listen to this. There's puddled up gas in the manifold sometimes, and sometimes it'll start up anyway. So you got to be ready to let off. So don't let it go wow, and it'll tack up. You know, you got to be saying, okay, if it starts, I'm gonna let off real quick. You know. And then in that case, if it does that, they say, what the heck did you do that for? You know, because they'll know you did something. Okay, that's just a little funny thing. Okay, coolant can be checked using what?
All the above.
All of the above. You guys are getting really good at this stuff. And who has anybody missed any questions at all yet?
Yep.
Who?
John.
I'll
You
be
missed
on
one
this.
too.
I
You missed
one,
two.
I missed two, you missed two. So,
Dexron 6 and Mercon 5 are examples of what?
B.
Transmission fluid. Mercon 5 and Dexron 6. Now these have got other compounds. They got, and here's something else too. When you're checking the transmission oil, what do you have to do first?
Warm the car up, and generally put it in park or neutral.
The engine's got to be running, though, right? But can the engine be warm and the transmission be cold?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure not just that the car is warm, you got to make sure the transmission's warm. Because if the transmission's not warm, the fluid's going to read lower. And a lot of dipsticks now have got a cold range and a hot range. Because they don't want somebody. See, one of the reasons that a lot of transmissions, the dipsticks have gone away, because they don't want people dumping a bunch of fluid in there that doesn't go in there, right?
You gotta take Nissan, or you gotta take a Nissan trip to them, you gotta pay like 30 or 40 bucks to then top off your fluid.
Well, unless you know how to do it. And that's why we have shop manuals, okay? So you can do that. But for years, they've been doing that with some vehicles, but they've got dipsticks still on a lot of them, but some of them don't. And there's a special dipstick that's got meter measurements on it, where it goes down in there and measures the depth of the oil in the pan, and you gotta have it at a particular temperature, look at a chart and all that kind of stuff. All right, did you see it? You understand? That's a poor man's scope. If you think you've got an open spark plug wire, but you're not sure, before you do anything else, you hook your test light up to the ground, touch it to that tack terminal, and if it's boop, 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 like that, you gotta go find out which one it is. But something else you can do, if you think you got a spark that's leaking out the boot and hitting somewhere, you can take some 409 or something and spray it. And when you take 409 or something and spray it, it's gonna make that thing start going pop, 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 and it's gonna start missing on that. So, I got a bad plug wire right there. First thing I used to do. Also, let's say that if you hook your test light up to this, where it's flickering on the tack side, and while you got it hooked up, you snap the accelerator. If it goes boom, 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 like that means you're gonna need spark plugs. The plugs are breaking down. Okay, now then, these guys in here are turning into a skeleton. I gotta finish this test over here. Okay, let me see.
16.
Technician A says most manufacturers specify replacement of the air filter every 30,000 miles.
See,
Technician B recommends replacing the air filter every year. Which technician is correct?
Both.
That's both, but you know what I do when I pull an air filter out? If I'm checking it, what do you do?
Change
What do you do? No, you don't change it every time. I mean, if you check it, it don't need to be changed. Why spend that 15 bucks, you know?
What either?
Blow it off with it.
No, I throw it on the floor, and I watch it when it hits. And if a bunch of dirt comes out of it when it hits the floor, I put one in there. But if I get one out, and it looks decent, I can see daylight through it and all that kind of stuff, and I drop it on the floor, and no dirt comes out of it, I say, well, this probably don't need air filter right now. Here's another thing, though. The rubber around the side of the air filter is actually going to be, if the air filter box is busted. You ever seen that? You ever seen the air filter box busted? You ever seen somebody try to fix it with duct tape?
or JB Weldon did a crappy job.
Why is that not smart?
Because it could melt.
Not just that, it's if it didn't seal really good, and next thing you know, you're burning oil and everything, and you pull the air cleaner off, and you look, and there's a bunch of dust and dirt inside that hose. You destroyed your engine because you were too cheap to buy a new air filter housing. Ouch. And if it's about like a Power Stroke or something, it's $18,000 for a new engine, you know. And we've seen that at the dealership. We would see them where somebody was changing air filter, busted a housing, because they, oh crap, I'll just worry about that later. Not a good plan. Okay. All right, put that one in your, make sure your name's on it. Okay.
Cost $18,000 to fix it.
Number 17. Technician A says the metal brake fluid reservoir found on older vehicles requires the top to be removed to check brake fluid level. Yeah. Technician B says when filling a brake fluid reservoir to leave room for expansion due to heat. Who's right about that? That's both of those guys. But let me ask you this. Let's say that your aunt or somebody calls and says, well, since you've been to automotive school, I got a question for you. Whenever I leave the house in the morning, my brake light is on. And I know my park brake's not engaged. And I drive about 3 miles to the first stop sign I come to, and before I get to that first stop sign, my brake light goes off. And this happens every single morning. Never stops. What you gonna tell your aunt or your grandma?
Take it to a shop.
Or this guy that you're trying to impress? No. What you do is you say, Auntie, if you'll come by here, I'll add a little brake fluid and that should take care of your trouble. If it's a little bit low on brake fluid and you leave the house and that little sensor is telling you it's low on brake fluid, as the fluid heats up, it expands like transmission fluid does. Engine oil doesn't do that so much. But anyway, when it raises up, it takes that, it gets that thing off the thing and the brake light goes out. Now, why does the brake fluid get low to begin with? Is that something you should worry about? Do that one on that same truck. Huh? Maybe drop my pen. All right. What? Why does the brake fluid go low to begin with? Talk to me, somebody. It goes low on every vehicle, and you have to add it. Why?
Go a little bit faster than others.
Huh?
Go a little bit faster than others when you have issues.
What about when your brake pads wear and those pistons are pushing out, and behind the pistons in those calipers it has to fill up with brake fluid, and as that happens over thousands of miles of brake pad wear, you've done brakes where whenever you squish the piston back up in there, brake fluid drips on the ground.
Yeah, I thought I busted the line.
Yeah, but what happened was you were basically pushing brake fluid out of the calipers back into the master cylinder because somebody had filled up the master cylinder and the brake fluid was dripping on the floor. So you need to keep a check on that. That's why the red brake light is on. What if the red brake light didn't work? Is it possible you could use enough where you could run really low on brake fluid?
Probably.
And that, let me tell you, there was a car one time, back in, my dad had a Volkswagen shop, you know, for 30 years. And he worked on some other stuff too. But anyway, the long and the short of it was, he bought these two soldiers came walking and they had this Volkswagen. And they said, we want to sight unseen sell you this Volkswagen Bug. And he said, they quit running on us, we're tired of fooling with it, we'll sell it to you for $50. So he gave him $50 for it, went and put the coil wire back on it, drove it back down. I said, hey, I'll drive this on the weekend. And we hadn't even worked on the darn thing except for that little thing. So we had this girl sitting in the back on a board. Me and Johnny Henderson were buzzing along there. And he says, there's a car coming up here. And I said, yeah, I know, there's a stop sign up here. And so when I hit the brake, there was no brakes. And there was a car and a truck coming that were about 30 feet apart, and we went between them. Scared the daylights out of everybody. But the brakes failed on that car because, you know, there was no low brake light, no brake fluid, low brake fluid light. I don't know where the brake fluid was going. We had to put brake fluid in it. It could have been fatal. But anyway, you got to be watching those brakes, and that's why the red brake light's there. So if the fluid goes a little bit low, it'll tell you early on. Let's see, polyglycol brake fluid, what? Number 18 is B, amber in color. A hybrid electric vehicle may have more than one coolant system, true or false? What's this tool used for?
Checking coolant.
Checking coolant level. This is, well, not checking coolant level. I mean, C is actually checking the coolant freeze protection. That's the refractometer. All right. Anybody got any questions? Everybody know? All right.